Thanks for meeting with me today about Domain 1. As I understand this domain, much of this will be observed during the pre-conference stage.
Yes, there is 1A, Knowledge of Content and Pedagogy, 1C, Setting Instructional Outcomes, and 1D, Knowledge of Resources and Technology.
Don't forget, there is also 1F, Designing Student Assessments. And Domain 1A can also be observed during the actual lesson. All other components in this domain are directly related to the pre-conference.
Yes, this year we will focus on 4 components of Domain 1.
From what I understand, we will receive the pre-observation conference tool, with questions we are to consider before meeting with our evaluator.
So, we will be prepared before the pre-conference with this tool? What will the conference look like?
The evaluator wants us to paint the picture of what they are going to observe. He also wants to know my reasons for what I am teaching and how I determine methods of teaching. I won't assume that the observer knows anything about my teaching or even my students. The pre-conference is the place to articulate what and why I am teaching.
Let's go through each question from the pre-observation tool. We can identify each component the question addresses and possible questions I may be asked by the observer.
Great idea. A copy of the questions for the pre-observation can be found in this Blackboard class in the Handout and Resource section. Question number 1. What are your lesson objectives? I think this question addresses Domain 1A.
It also touches on Domain 1C. Some questions the observer may ask include, why did you choose these goals? How do you plan to communicate the learning objective to the students? How much time are you spending on these goals and objectives?
Okay, so this will be a conversation between me and the observer, guided by these questions. That makes sense.
Yes, it really does make sense.
Question number 2. How are the lesson objectives aligned with state curriculum?
That question is pretty cut and dry. Let's be sure to only have a few objectives for one lesson. Yes, usually there are no more than 4 standards being addressed. Question 2 directly relates to components 1A and 1C.
Question 3. What data did you use to design this lesson? How did the data influence the planning of this lesson? This is going to take some thinking.
Some questions the evaluator may ask include, what kind of background knowledge do the students need for this lesson? How do you become familiar with students' background knowledge, experiences, and cultural resources? What are some of the ways you will make the learning relevant to students?
Question 3 relates to Domain 1C and 1F. These questions really challenge me to think deeply about my pedagogy. Let's take a 5-minute break and continue this process. I am beginning to understand the pre-conference more.
Good idea. We will start with question number 4. See you in 5 minutes.